Hey y'all, coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida. This is GovLove, a podcast about local government brought to you by engaging local government leaders. I'm Ben Kittelson, manager of TELUS and GovLove co-host. We've got a great episode for you today. We're going to be talking leadership and the role of an assistant or deputy manager. But first, the best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. Engaging local government leaders is a professional association engaging the brightest minds in local government. And so if you're not already a member, go join and become a member today. It really does help this podcast, support this podcast. And, this is our early access as we're recording, but the next ELGL conference will be announced soon. So it'll be later this year in 2025. So get ready and you should become a member now so you can get the news when it comes out. Now, let me introduce today's guest. Emily Cologne she most recently served as Deputy City Manager for the City of Lakeland, Florida. She also served as Assistant City Manager there and was the manager of the Innovation and Strategy effort at the city. Previously, she held several roles for Pasco County, Florida, including Program Administrator, Budget Manager, and Analyst. She's served as an adjunct professor at the University of South Florida and as an ICMA credentialed manager. Emily, welcome to GovLove. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, as you know, as a GovLove listener, we have a lightning round a tradition to do a lightning round to get to know our guest a little better. So, my first question for you: what was the first concert that you went to?
Oh my gosh, this is going to show how boring I am with these lightning questions. So, my first concert was in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, and I think it was called Country Jam.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm from Minnesota, so it didn't seem that, from Florida to the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin's a little bit different. But being from Minnesota, it was Country Jam, and I just have to say, claim to fame. Carrie Underwood was there, Taylor Swift, everyone who no one knew who they were yet. It was, and I look back at the photos and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. I was cool before it was cool.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Taylor before she went pop. I mean, that's
yeah.
That's great.
Rhinestone guitar and everything.
Yeah, I love that. Very cool. All right, next lightning question for you. What book are you currently reading?
So I am reading. It's a book called Life's Great Question, and my husband got sent a book with no one saying who it's from. And the irony is I'm the reader, not him. So I stole it from him. So I'll read it and tell him what it's about. And then he'll figure out who sent it to him. But it's called Life's Great Question by Tom Rath.
Oh, very cool. I like that as a
disclaimer.
Yeah.
It could be terrible, but it could be wonderful too.
Yeah. And that'll tell you who sent it probably based on
Yeah.
All right. Next lightning round question for you. Cake or pie?
I would say I have 3 kids and I love a good funfetti cake.
Ooh, okay. Yes, I like that. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
All right, then my last lightning round question for you. Where do you go for inspiration?
Everywhere. I am a very curious person. So, I think I journal. I will go somewhere and see an opportunity for improvement. I could go through like a Starbucks or a Chick-fil-A line and think like, you could make it better by this. Or I could see someone working for the city or the county and just see things like, I could be scrolling LinkedIn and seeing what other cool, innovative ideas people are using, social media. I mean, everywhere. I really am a curious person, maybe too curious sometimes.
Maybe too curious.
Yeah, my brain doesn't shut off. So
yeah,
I can pretty much turn anything into inspiration. I'm a very optimistic person too, so maybe that's the double-edged sword.
Yeah. Put those together. You're always You're always
we can
inspired
totally
by
do
something.
this. Yeah.
How hard could it be? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
How'd you end up working in local government? I always love to ask, how I mentioned a little bit of your career path in the bio, but like, how'd you kind of end up in this field and until Friday working for the City of Lakeland?
Yeah. So I worked, well, first of all, I graduated undergrad during the recession. And my undergrad was in international business. So pre-recession, I thought that I would be living abroad, working some very posh, glamorous European life. Imagine that. And then the recession hit and it was like, oh, no companies are hiring to go international with no experience.
Yeah.
to pay all this student loans. Okay. So I actually went into corporate sales, took the highest paying job, not really with the intent of a long term, and was like, I'll figure it out. Well, corporate sales was not my jam. I was pretty good at it, but I was just like, I can't do this for the next 30 years. This is miserable.
Yeah.
And funny enough, my husband was like, but you're good at it. You're bonusing every quarter. And I'm like, oh my God. So, you had to get out. I had to get out. So I went back to work for the University of South Florida. That's where I did my undergrad. And I worked there as a work study student. So they said, well, just come back and work for us. We need some help. And, you already know the job. So come back and do this. And then you can try out different graduate programs. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a professional student. So I actually did non-degree seeking a couple different programs while I did like some life searching. And then at the end, I ended up in the public administration program. So I got my MPA. And the funny thing is, when I kind of decided that was the path that I was going to go, it was between either a university president or a city manager. I was like, I need to be in the charge. I need to go fix stuff, run stuff.
Yeah.
And then I, of course, went the local government route. And then before I graduated, I made sure to get state and federal experience, just kind of testing the waters to make sure I want to stay in local government. And of course, local government got my heart. In undergrad, I asked a professor, I said, help me get an internship. I was working full time. I was an older graduate student. And so I had to work full time, but I said, I'll do an internship too. And my employer was great. So I adjusted it. And I said, send me to a city that's, not glamorous, that kind of has some issues. Like, show me how bad it can be. Scare me off.
Yeah.
And it did not scare me off. I was like, this is great. There's so much to do. We can fix this. Probably like the opposite. So, but that was my test for myself. So that's how I ended up falling in love with local government, if you will.
Yeah. Was there something, either as you were kind of exploring grad programs about the MPA program, or maybe that first experience in local government, like that you were like, oh, this is for me, like it's something you got to work on or something you learned about that was like, this is where I want to be?
Yeah. So I think, like during my like soul searching effort of like going through different programs, I kind of took a step back and thought, like, what do I need to be happy and fulfilled in a career? And so mine was, I want to work with people, I want to solve problems, and I want to have an impact, right? So those were kind of like my three guiding principles when I was going through the programs. And then, I say that, and, being someone in local government, you're like, duh, like, how clear was this? But at the time, I didn't have a lot of exposure to local government, so it wasn't so clear. My first non-degree seeking was the MBA program, but I did business as an undergrad, and it wasn't super inspiring to me. And then I was like, let me do the exact polar opposite of a business degree. So what would that be? And they told me, I don't know if this, maybe someone would disagree when they hear this, but it was communications. So I went non-degree seeking in the communications department for a semester, and it was, people weren't wearing shoes to class. It was just the anti-business, if you will. And it was PhD and grad students, and they're just like debating and arguing the whole class. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not being productive in, my estimation, because I was so used to a rigid schedule. So, kind of shook me up, and I definitely didn't want to do that. And that's how I ended up in the MPA. I think the MPA program at the University of South Florida has a lot of practical application. So when I was in grad school is when, and I'm also in Florida. So the Trayvon Martin incident in Sanford, Florida happened. And the city manager of Sanford came and spoke to our class. So that is like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, very impactful. That like, you're on the national news, you're having riots, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. And just the access to have him come and speak to our class, I think that was one of the more defining moments, because it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your personal opinions are. It doesn't matter what you saw. It matters how you're going to manage, the staff, the community, how you're going to get, it was just a really cool experience for me during grad school that like fundamentally shapes how I see things in my role.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that'd be fascinating to be in the middle of it and him being willing to share or talk about that. Like
Yeah,
that's, I mean,
it was just like, hey, no phone, this is an academic
yeah,
exercise, and it was the professor who coordinated this. He was a retired city manager, so
mhm,
he's been there, but he was like, listen, my experience isn't nothing compared to what's happening right now.
yeah, yeah,
And
and
no questions were off limits because we want to know.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, that's fascinating. Yeah, those are. That reminds me of a class I took for my MBA program where it was just like the professor was a former city manager and brought in like a lot of current city managers to talk about like different issues and things they
yeah.
were dealing with, and that was the best way to kind of learn like what is the job actually like versus like
Yeah,
what's
like
in
we
the
read all
textbook.
this
Yeah,
theory, we talk about it, we're
yeah,
like, okay, now how do you actually do that? Like that's,
yeah, yeah,
when stuff goes crazy, how do you kind of maintain sanity and order?
yeah. Well, so and to stay on your career a little bit before we
Sure.
talk about kind of the meat of our conversation today, as we talk today, it's the Monday after your last day at the City of Lakeland, and so I know this may be a little personal, but I want to hear a little bit about kind of your transition and kind of where you're going, and like how
Sure.
you and your partner are balancing a 2 career household, because I think um, I'll reveal my bias before you answer, but
Yeah.
I think often in local government, we talk about how, you as a city manager are moving around and your family kind of just comes along. And we rarely talk about the other side of that where you have, and I've been the trailing spouse a couple of
Yeah.
times now,
Hmm.
where you have to kind of adjust your career as your partner has an opportunity. And so, anyway, so I'd be curious to hear kind of your perspective on that and
Sure.
how that's
Yeah.
going.
I'm totally an open book. So feel free. My husband and I, we've been married, let's see, 14 years. And we've pretty much been in and around Tampa Bay.
Hmm.
Well, so then Lakeland, I ran into the outgoing deputy city manager at the time and the city man or assistant city manager at the time that said, hey, will you consider the Lakeland job? I was actually pregnant with our second child at the time. And it was like I'm no, I'm not looking to move. I'm not, looking to have this baby. And Pasco County, which is just north of Tampa, was a good gig for me.
Hmm.
They let me do a lot in many different. I think I had more titles than years in that county, but it was great. And so we ended up making the move to Lakeland for my career. My husband again worked out of Tampa, and then they had an office in Orlando. It was an unfortunate situation where the partner in Orlando unexpectedly passed, and so my husband was going to go through both. So that kind of like, okay, this kind of worked for both of us. So we moved to Lakeland. And then, we experienced COVID and life changed. We had our last and final baby, so we have 3 kids now, and now COVID, it's still around, but it's not as present in our lives. He was commuting to Orlando for his career more because then he became the Orlando partner over the time we were in Lakeland. So
Hmm.
um, a car crash for him, and anyone who's familiar with I-4 in Florida is
Oh God. Yeah.
maybe one of the least desirable roads to be on. And there's traffic no matter what.
Hmm.
So, sometimes his commute was 2 hours plus. And so, I was kind of a single parent
Yeah.
during the week with a deputy city manager job and
Yeah.
three kids. It just was a lot. So we were kind of like, we could have kept going, but it was like, I kind of want my husband to be here for dinner or for,
Yeah. Yeah.
bedtime. Like, let's partner it up. So, and, again, with the car crash, I need him to be able to lift these kids with his back. So we had we made the decision that we were going to move to Orlando. His career was the driver for that. And then I would figure it out. So it's a little bit interesting because my I guess my hard line that I drew in our I always say we negotiate, but that's just our marriage. We negotiate everything apparently. So in our negotiations, I said I wasn't willing to disrupt the children out of school in the middle of a school.
Yeah.
Like in the
Yeah.
school year. Like so, if we're going to do it, we have the luxury of doing it during the summer because you can keep commuting. We can we can figure something else out, but let's do it for the kids during the summer. And, of course he agreed because he's a good dad. So so we ended up finding a house and of course the real estate market, is
It's great timing. Yeah.
the anti-hero here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we found a house last summer and I gave my notice to Lakeland early July, and my city manager was pretty shocked and was like, please, please, please do a longer transition. My initial thought was, hey, I'll come to Orlando and then I'll figure it out from there and like get us settled and then have some time to do that. So the schedule a little bit flipped because I transitioned out of Lakeland for 9 months. So we're kind of settled now. So there's nothing to do on that end. We just settled while on the weekends. And so now I'm looking to do probably some consulting. So, hey, here's my subtle plug. If anyone wants me to do some work, I am open and available. I haven't quite figured it all out yet. I love local government. I can't imagine not either working in local government or local government adjacent. I'm really active in ICMA, FCCMA, and I'm a founding member of Florida Women Leading Government. So that is something that's a lot of time right now. So TBD, that's a loose, probably long story long on where I currently am at and where I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that, like I said at the beginning, I don't think we talk enough about the other side of two career households and like what that means in a local government career. Cause I'll speak for myself. Like we came to Jacksonville, Florida for my wife's career, and the local government scene here wasn't totally what I was expecting. And so I ended up doing consulting. And so like, I still feel like I'm in the profession, but not maybe in the kind of role that I thought I'd be, I'm leaving MPA school, but
I know that I'm going to have a little bit of, it's going to be a little bit emotional because you're like, I'm the leader of the team. Where's my team? And you're like, oh, here I am, like doing this. And it's all right. It's just a little bit kind of opposite of what you expect because now I'm geographically locked into where we are.
Yep.
And so if an opportunity comes up around here, maybe that would be something to consider, but kind of to your point, we're kind of doing this the other way, but I'd rather stay married to my spouse than the role, if you will.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. The family life is also important.
Yeah. Like they're still going to be here. And it's always like to keep the perspective of it doesn't matter how great you are at your job or how beloved you are in the community. Mm-hmm. Like when you either pass or retire or they refill your spot. I mean, everybody's replaceable. And I don't say that to be like dark, but that's how it's supposed to be. So, my kids aren't going to get another mom. Hopefully my husband doesn't get another wife. Hopefully I'm it for them. So
they can't just plug in.
I guess he could get another wife, right? But like my kids aren't getting another mom. I'll maybe stop with that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about kind of your transition, and I know it's fresh or maybe not with the long transition from Lakeland. Maybe it's not quite as fresh as when you first decided, but I appreciate that. So I wanted to have you on to talk about a couple articles you wrote that before we were recording, we were talking about the strange timing of them coming out at the same time, but or very close to the same time. But the first one was you wrote for ELGL about nonpartisan leadership, and so there's obviously we live in some polarized times and some very partisan times, but maybe as a like framing, can you talk a little about why you wanted to write about that topic and kind of how you were thinking about it before you put your thoughts down?
Sure. So just, it's like when you tell people you work in local government, a lot of people don't know what that means, or they just hear government and then they have some big feelings one way or the other. And it's like, okay, let's, so now, it kind of got to the point where I didn't want to tell people I worked in local government. It was just like, oh yeah, I work, maybe say that, I don't know. I tried to get crafty with it. It was like, this is silly. Or I'd have to explain to people. And it was like, and again, I guess I'm a little bit of a teacher by nature. So I felt like I was giving civics lessons to everyone I met or, neighbors, or I was like, okay, well, this is what this really means. And so it's just kind of been weighing on me. And then of course, having the the national rhetoric and even the state rhetoric kind of
Mm-hmm.
infiltrate our staff, and people having opinions, people getting worked up, people having emotions. And it's not always negative, but a lot of it has been either divisiveness or fear or just kind of infiltrating the workspace. So kind of that was I knew I wanted to write something
Yeah.
about it, and I wasn't really sure how to frame it, but that was kind of like the backstory of like, I just want to put something out there that, and I know everybody, I shouldn't say I know everybody thinks that that's probably a gross overstatement, but like, I know a lot of managers in our roles are thinking it, like,
Yeah.
we're thinking about like, how do we work in government? How do we work in the politics and still stay nonpartisan?
Yeah. 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 How was it showing up for your staff? Like, what was it? Yeah, how was it impacting them? Some of this, like, kind of national and state level.
Well, and I feel like it hasn't just been, within the last year. I feel like
Yeah.
it's been literal years,
Hmm. Hmm.
since pre-COVID, we've been having these conversations. So it's my style to lean in, right? So I
Yeah.
lean into the conversations. Like, how are you feeling? How does this make you feel? How are we, well, not necessarily asking somebody about their personal politics, but I need to know how, are they able to do their job? Are they able to, you know, I always have to say, like, we work for everybody in the city. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you agree with their personal beliefs or their lifestyles, or none of that matters, because it's not the city of Emily Cologne. It's not, I'm
Hmm.
not the ruler. It's not, and nobody else is. They're they're a human, and we're here to do a job. So kind of like reframe it like that. And, you know, we've had some situations, I guess, where just people are being exposed to things that maybe they don't have a lot of experience, or maybe they haven't had the opportunity to have a more open mind. So I think just being willing to
Yeah.
have those conversations and meet people where they're at. I kind of hate that phrase, but I kind of love it too, because it's so true.
Yeah.
It's kind of a judgment free zone of like, if you have the
Hmm.
best of intents, we can have a good conversation. Now, the other side is like the malicious, or, I always have to, I always say, like, democracy works when there's a healthy tension. It doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. Like, that's not
Yeah.
really how we're set up. So like, let's just kind of remember that if somebody wins and somebody loses, that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
So, we had some instances. Of course, I'm sure everybody had HR issues. It could be a whole week long podcast in itself. But just to like monitor that and not let things. You can't say hateful things and represent the city on your social media profile. Like,
Yep.
that
Yep.
is unacceptable. You can have your personal feelings, but remember our core values of the city, and we need to model those.
Mm.
So just kind of going through that, of course, city attorney at our hip on that, because we're not taking anyone's rights away. We're just trying to remember that we serve every citizen, in our city.
Yeah. 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 And it's easy to lose track of that, like, hey,
Yeah.
there are people of every background and every belief that you're serving, and as like a local government professional. And so you have to, that means that there's pressure on you to talk in a way that serves all of them and doesn't alienate them. And
Right.
yeah, maybe that means you can't be as honest as you'd like to be, but that's okay.
Well, and we are one of the fastest growing MSAs. I mean, every basically, I think everyone in Florida could say this. So it's like,
Yeah.
more and more people are coming into the city. It's growing rapidly. So it's not going to be, things are changing, things are evolving. There are
Mm-hmm.
new people, new different ideas, and just being open to that and kind of modeling that, and then leaning in.
Yeah.
Especially, I say, with some legacy. I say legacy employees are long tenured employees, to say, okay, I know that's the way we've always done it, but it's kind of the mindset of innovation of, well, why? Or is that still the best
Yeah.
way? And it's the same thing of like, well, can we use that idea? Or, maybe we are biased in the way we do things, or maybe, different things. But I think applying it to things that aren't so hot, like hot topics,
Mm-hmm.
helps too. That
Yeah.
helps like break down the wall.
Yeah. So one of the things you wrote about is how nonpartisanship can be kind of a superpower. So why do you why do you say that? And then maybe how are you, or what advice do you give folks to think about how they can be kind of apply the superpower in their jobs, or try to be neutral when things get polarized.
Yeah, well, I think it's just my ability to be nonpartisan is my ability to be a collaborator, to be
Mm,
that safe zone for anybody. It's not supporting or being affiliated with any political party, and being very conscientious of that. Keep the red and the blue out of local government as much as we
hmm
can, and make our decisions based on merit, data, public interest, and not necessarily like an ideology or a party loyalty. Um, the national rhetoric and the state rhetoric are what they are, but like let's worry about kind of what's going on in our city and really tie it to everything that we have. We've already, we have public servants and boards and our commissions and agencies that have to serve everyone equally. Like we don't have to get involved in that rhetoric, and we shouldn't. The manager council form of government is a beautiful thing, especially in times of this. Now if
Yeah,
you're a strong
yeah,
mayor, I mean, good luck. I don't, I don't know what to tell you on that one, but I mean, it's the beauty of the manager council form of having a professional
yeah,
manager administrator at the top versus a political one.
yeah, yeah. Or my line is always, there's no like Republican or Democratic way to like fill potholes or pick up
Right.
trash. Like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And and that's not to say that there aren't politics in local government, which I think
Yeah,
sometimes people can confuse. And you're like, well, I'm just nonpartisan. That doesn't mean I'm tone deaf to the politics that happen in every organization, including at the city. So
yeah. Well, can you talk about how you think about that line a little bit? Because I do think that's where folks can get tripped up, where they see politics as only the partisanship at the national level. But obviously, we have to be political to be effective, public servants in local government. So, how do you kind of think about navigating that?
well, I just
Hey,
think,
yeah,
yeah, politics is, it's unavoidable in any governance structure. And it's just the process of decision making, the influence, negotiation, competing priorities, interests, it's kind of all of that.
mm,
Nonpartisan is I'm not going to subscribe to an ideology or party loyalty, but the politics are how you effectively can get things done. It
yeah,
happens in all human organizations and even ones that aren't partisan,
yeah,
just like local
yeah.
government. Um, I mean, so let's talk about the process of even setting our budget.
hmm
We
Yeah,
have competing priorities. We have community members who are going to support things. Ultimately, the commission or the council, you know, they're going to have some sort of bias of what they want in there. There's going to be funding trade offs, navigating public opinion. I mean, all of that is political, but
yep,
it's nonpartisan, or it should
yeah,
be
yeah,
not. You know what I mean? So that's like I guess, a tangible example, if you will.
yeah. Well, and can you maybe talk more about like how you see kind of the role of, especially someone at your level in the city manager's office, and leading departments and staff, like what their role is in some of the small p politics of like how do you come to a decision as a group or with elected bodies that doesn't that you need to bring all those folks together to come to a decision, and that is political, but it's also you want to be seen as neutral and
Yeah.
nonpartisan and all that. So like, yeah, how do you kind of think about that?
Yeah. So I always, kind of, again, I kind of break it back to our roles. What are we here for? We're here as to get the information, to do the research, to be the subject matter experts within the departments, and then gather that for an elected body. So,
Mm,
for instance, so I'll give you an example. So last year, it was recommended by the staff to the commission to increase millage. And here's the reason. Here's days cash. We went through a full exercise of, future, 5 years out, planning days cash and all of, the benchmarking, everything you can think of. And the commission ultimately, after a long debate, decided that millage was going to stay. And some of the staff looked at that like they were defeated. And
mm,
I said, we're not defeated. We did our job. It's not our job to fight for a policy. It's our job to recommend what the facts are. They, as the elected officials, represent the community. They decide, and then we adjust. So the millage did not increase. Now we adjust to meet where we are. And
Mhm.
sometimes, and I get it, it's like the win lose. And it's the irony is I was a college athlete and I feel like
Mhm.
I used to be so competitive and now I'm like this, like, I like feel like I don't have a competitive bone in my body, which is the irony to someone who knew me earlier in life. But it's kind of like there doesn't have to be winners and losers. It's just, okay, we presented our case, our information was sound, the elected officials chose to go in that direction, and that's fine because they have a different perspective. Like, let's not make this combative and then just react. That's the manager council form that we talk about. And I was like, this is literally a grad school case study.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
fine. And just kind of like taking the emotions and not taking things so personal.
Yeah.
Like kind of taking that out of it. Like, and I think I said in my article, not everybody has to have an opinion about everything. And I think sometimes that's, I probably need to like put that on put on like a plaque or something. Like, it's okay not to have an opinion, like we don't have to be enraged or worked up about something all the time.
Yeah. 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 It's okay to be neutral.
Yeah. Like it's a beautiful, peaceful place.
Well, and I think that's a good example, and I'm sure our listeners can think of a dozen like examples from their own career that are like that, where in that instance, you're not being politically neutral by making a recommendation. You're using your professional expertise to say, hey, this is what the best option should be, and it doesn't mean the elected body or the politicians can't disagree or do something different, but there's that role of being, a leader and being a professional and a city manager or assistant or deputy, that you have a role in the politics part of it. It's not,
right,
but it is nonpartisan. It's, hey,
right.
this is a neutral, what we think as professionals.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, anything else from that article that you want to highlight? Or obviously we'll link to it in kind of the show notes for this episode so folks can go find it. But anything else from kind of as you were thinking about that or putting together your thoughts on that you want to share with folks?
No, I mean, I just think being mindful and, sometimes when you feel, when you kind of start feeling the emotions, just like take a deep breath and think and kind of like think about it. Like, wait a minute, why am I feeling some type of way about this? Like, okay, I actually don't, we're good.
Yeah. 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 Taking a beat, take emotions out of it, and then figure out.
And especially, and again, I mean, I hate to say this again, but just with the national and the state, it's very trendy to get engaged, to have opinions, and you're like, okay, and especially with social media, and social media is a blessing and a curse. It's like things that are just repeatedly shared, and you're like, well, did you go run that down, or are you just sharing it because it sounded good? Because it's really just like a sound bite of like a bigger, that kind of. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, and I agree. Like, you don't want to just react to whatever's being shared. And at the same time, I feel like, I get the sense of some of the local governments I work with and the people I know in the field now, you feel like you're on this razor's edge of like, you don't want to say the wrong thing, and then it gets picked up by media.
Yeah, and like career ending. You're like,
yeah,
wait, what?
It's out of control,
like,
and
that was not even like half of the story. Yeah.
So then, in a recent ICMA PM magazine, you also wrote an article that that I really enjoyed and wanted to talk more about with you.
Okay.
Because you're just,
I'm an author.
You're an author.
Maybe my next career is I'm going to write some books.
Yeah. But you talked about the role of an assistant and deputy manager, and especially in managing those with like more subject matter expertise than you. Mm-hmm. I do think that's a fascinating topic, because I think sometimes folks get to, the level you were at, and then, how do you manage an IT department if you're not an IT expert?
Yeah.
So can you maybe talk as like a little bit of a framing of like, why can this be like a tricky manager employee relationship like that?
Yeah.
Like, hey, yeah.
So I think, kind of the premise, I guess, for writing this article, of course, when you get asked to write an article, you're like, oh gosh, what is the topic going to be? And then it just kind of came to me when I was reflecting on my career. So when I became the assistant city manager of Lakeland, Florida, I was 32, and the organization is about 2,700 employees. So it's not a small organization by any means. Mm-hmm. And so having a lot of employees and teams report up to me, and even in Pasco County, I had this too. I was the purchasing director, the interim purchasing director, and I never even filled out a requisition. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
I was over the fleet department and I've never driven my car out of warranty. I don't have a clue. Like the first thing, maybe I could change a tire with YouTube. So like, I've always in my career, I've always been willing to take these roles on. So then when I became the assistant city manager, I thought that, I was nervous changing, of course, cities to be over these people at 32. I was in my head a little bit like, oh my gosh, I hope that they're gonna, take me seriously. I hope that they're gonna value me. And it was kind of like laughable to look back and like, I don't know what I was so worked up about. Just like be yourself and figure it out. And so I have had the pleasure of being over, for instance, my water utilities director is an engineer, obviously highly technical. And he's going to kill me if I say his age. I think he's like in his 50s ish. So he's got like 20 years on me, and just figuring out how to have a relationship with your directors. I'm my airport director. I've never personally flown a plane or, but being over an international airport is a little bit intimidating. But you're like, how am I going to be effective? How am I going to make them better? And how am I going to do it in a way that they don't feel micromanaged or like I'm nagging them? Like, how do we make this a mutually beneficial relationship for us? And then, of course, for the city as well. So, and, we have gone through some changes in the city, and I am a people-centered person. So I've heard like complaints or, some criticism, and I'm like, okay, let's reel it back and let's like talk about this. But I think, ultimately when I think of like, how do I like, I'm again pretty open. So I'm like, well, have I micromanaged you? And they're like, no. Like, okay, well, what's the difference? Is it personality, and are they really micromanaging, or are you just feeling, again, how are our feelings and what are we doing different? So I kind of was, I guess, going through that in my head, and conversation with my water utility director, Dave, he said, Emily, it's because you ask enough questions, but you ask the right questions that you can tell that you're curious, but ultimately you don't direct, like you have to do this or, do a 22-inch water main. I'm not directing at any level to do that. But when we talk about things and it's like more of a collaborative conversation, and then it's, well, so I'll say, well, what is your recommendation? Well, it's like talk through that. I'm asking the director, what is their recommendation? Like, let's talk through that. And, and I'm saying, and I'm almost, I'm probably almost like having them dumb it down and say, well, does that still make sense? And then ask the questions from there. But then ultimately, I don't say always, but often I will default to my director. I mean, I can, now that I say that, I'm having like vivid flashbacks of where I had to make the call that was not theirs. But, just having that relationship, I think it just goes back to having that relationship with my directors that they know. And I said it earlier, like the healthy tension of disagreement. Like it's not it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's making us better and making us better for the community. And then having the professional respect and not taking things personally. And I think at the end of the day, my directors knew I had their back. I was not a yes person. I would definitely challenge them. But when it came to it, like nobody had their back stronger than me. So I think it's just a relationship building that you really have to do that. It can't just be transactional. I think when it's not a relationship and it's more transactional, then it's very micromanaged. Like, well, you don't even care. You're not listening. You're just a taskmaster at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So that's interesting. Cause that to me, it sounds like it's more about building that rapport, getting them to trust you.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, trust is the center of everything we do.
Yeah. So how do you, for coming in cold to like a new organization or a new department that you haven't, had much experience with, or maybe didn't even exist in the organization you're in before?
Yeah.
Like, how would you kind of go about doing that? Like building that trust and kind of building that relationship?
I think lots of different ways. So I am, I love work-alongs, which, people have different opinions, but I definitely, and maybe I mean, of course, everything stems from how I was raised in, a blue collar. I don't think you can say blue collar anymore. Maybe not. But, I was raised in a working class. Maybe you're not supposed to say that either, but I'll have to ask my parents how I'm supposed to describe this. But, I grew up in a lower socioeconomic household that really valued hard work, that, neither of my parents have college degrees. And I think sometimes there is a disconnect between field staff and, they call it the ivory tower of city management.
Mm-hmm.
And I am of, what I say is what I mean, and what I mean is what I say type of person. So I have gone on the back of a garbage truck with our solid waste team and, slung trash bags in. And I have, and also I'm female. So, there is a little bit of bias, I think, or a stereotype of like, oh, she's just going to be, pretty in the city manager's office. Like, nope, I can do hard work. And, I laid concrete on our main street in the middle of July with our public works team. And, I was teasing our public works director, like, why aren't you out here? He's like, oh man, it's too hot for that. I'm like, yeah, right, dude. But like willing to do, there's not a job in the city that I'm not willing to do alongside them. Now, let me be clear, I did not take any union work, but so of course we have a fire union. So I would do ride-alongs with them and, if I went to a fire station and the alarm sounded, and it's one of the times I was out at one of our fire stations and of course the alarms go off. I wasn't planning to do a ride along that day. I was in a pencil skirt, which is a skirt that goes to your knees. It's not super,
not a lot of range of motion.
Not a lot of range of motion, if you will. But when the alarms go off and they say, do you want to ride? The answer is always yes.
Yeah.
So I climbed in the fire truck with them, and I was, thank God my arm strength helped boost me up. And I thought, this is the fanciest fire call that these citizens are ever going to get. And then it was one of those situations that if anyone has any fire service experience, they know, you're on one call and then you got to go to the next. And we had 3 calls back to back. And I love our fire chief. He's texting me, you want me to come pick you up? Nope, I'm not tapping out. Like, we're fine. And, but that was gaining the respect of our team. And it's funny because afterwards I was talking with that crew and, I was like, well, is there anything you guys want to change or any pain points you want to talk about? And one of them jokingly said, well, it was one of our new clean cabs and how the staircase came down. They were going to complain about it, but they said, after we saw you get up there in the skirt, we thought we'd better suck it up. So you're like, yes, this, unintended consequence of doing that. So just, breaking down the barriers, showing that them that, I'm all about our team, and as long as they try their best and make the best effort, and if they make a mistake, like I'm right there with them to help figure it out. And my director's seen that I care about their teams. I think just being consistent also. I may love you or hate you, but it's just the consistency in my management. And so I think those are some of my, I guess, mindsets and how I do that. It was something I was very nervous about going to Lakeland because I felt like I had already, had so many scars and earned my keep in Pasco County that you're like, oh man, here I am. And, sometimes when people come and they have, I guess, maybe the personality, people sometimes are like, she can't be serious, or like, she's not, because I am so forthcoming and so transparent that like, she's not telling, there's a game. And I think it's just the consistency in showing, again, I mean what I say and I say what I mean, that I wear them down over time, I guess.
Well, sometimes it does take time though.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think those are great examples, and you're right that power of curiosity of like, well, I'm just going to keep asking and being curious and being open, like, can be really disarming for folks. I mean, that can really like build trust.
Well, not just about their work, but about them as humans. That's one of my favorite parts. Like, oh, there's Johnny, and his wife does this, or he's got a kid this, or and it's pretty cool because then we have now I'm flashing back to all these employees because there isn't actually a Johnny that I'm thinking of, but like one of the employees that we had, his daughter came to work for us, and I was like, oh my gosh, you look just like your dad, which, I don't know that they love that, but then seeing them the next year and saying, oh, how's your daughter doing? Is it working out? There's 2,700 employees, so it's not like I see all of them every day. And that's a connector for us, so making all these connections. And I mean, here's a pro tip. People usually care about their kids the most. So at least that's me. Like, if you're going to ask me about my kids, I automatically am giving you like bonus points.
There you go.
Just like having that, and being able to say hello. And sometimes you forget their name, but I'm really good at remembering conversations we've had or like little tidbits. And then those people in the organization feel seen. They, they feel like they're contributing to something bigger, and it's kind of grooming that workplace to be like that.
I love that. Those are great lessons. So I want to give you maybe a hypothetical. I don't know if you've been in the situation, but so I would imagine that relationship, that approach works really well for departments that are like high performing, or even like just doing kind of meeting expectations. If you're over like a department where, hey, we're having issues in purchasing and the director's turned over a bunch of times, we don't think, other departments don't feel like they're getting good service, not to target your purchasing department, just using them as a hypothetical. But like, how do you balance that kind of like, hey, we want to be open, we want to trust, we want to be curious, but we also need to hold, a department that maybe you're not a subject expert in accountable to a different standard or a higher standard.
Well, so that I'm like, well, this sounds oddly familiar. So in Pasco County, this is no lie. So this is fair and full disclosure. In Pasco County, when I was there, that's what was happening. We had a long tenured purchasing director retire, and I think we went through, I'm going to get the number wrong because it's been a number of years, but like 2 or 3 directors and assistant directors. So it was a time of obviously essential service to the county, and then to the staff inside too, the inside staff and the warehouse staff. So that is how I became interim purchasing director. And the whole idea was, this is not it's interim for a reason. It's just to help create some stability for the team and for the internal team to purchasing warehouse, and then the greater team of the county. And it was roll up your sleeves, do the work. That was when I went out and worked in the warehouse. We had county surplus, and the warehouse was packed, and it was delaying projects, and the warehouse team wouldn't pick up stuff from other departments. So they got the whole disposal process wasn't working as it should. And so one day I went out to the warehouse and rolled up my sleeves, and they don't have them anymore, but the county uniform they used to be called county brown. So it was a brown uniform. So like I went and like personally made, had my, I went and paid for a patch that said Emily, put my patch on my shirt, and was a county brown worker. And, I remember some of my warehouse team getting smart, like, yeah, right, you can't lift anything. And it was like, okay. But like, thank God I have the physical ability, right? So that's like something I don't know how I would have had to get crafty. But like, again, that's kind of back to like working, like, nope, we're going to clear out this warehouse. And I remember at the time, my assistant county administrator, I kept in the loop, told him what I was doing, and he came out. It was a Friday, I think, that we were doing it. And he came out the warehouse like, hey, how's it going? And I like threw him a box. I'm like, hey, come on, don't just stand there. We got things to do. And he's that's not necessarily his type, but he embraced it. And I had, you came to visit, you were helping, don't just stand there. And, kind of breaking down the walls. And then on the internal, it was just being realistic. It was having the conversations with the other departments of like, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's on fire and let's get it taken care of. And then like, let me show you incremental progress. And having the team, the team was not necessarily super stoked with all the turnover, and to then see this young person who doesn't know anything about purchasing come be their leader. So it was just winning them on board. It was kind of disarming them. I think I said in my article, and it's true. And I do love donuts. So that maybe is another thing that I brought donuts to our first meeting. Like, hey, I don't know how I could do this without you. Like, y'all are the MVPs. Like, I'm here to just help give you some stability and make your work-life balance better. Like, You don't want people complaining about you. You don't want to, let's dig out of this hole together. And then when we got, and I was part of we had a really bad audit that we were going through where there was just some things that were failed, and it was what it was, because we're like, no, this is broken. We need to fix it. And just owning it. Yeah. I think when you try to hide it, or when you try to, it's like, no, you're just going to make it worse. So let's be honest. Let's be real. Here's where we are. And then let's dig out and figure out how to make this better, and find the collaboration to do so. And then we hired a permanent purchasing director who was wonderful. And then just my commitment to her is making her successful. I wasn't going to let her burn out. So I stayed really involved in the purchasing department for a while, with not hindering or not micromanaging her, just being that support to make her successful. And it ended up working. And then I got to step back and let her take full ownership, and create stability in the department. So that was actually a real example. I do not, and again, now it's like, okay, now I'm like a purchasing person. You're like, okay, but I have a heart for it, but I don't ever want to stay permanent. So.
You're more of one than you were before, but
yeah. Like I always say, like, I'm like an unofficial member of so many departments.
Yeah.
And I think that's just how I do it. And, like, let's be real, like, let's use data-driven decision-making. We don't have data, or we have the wrong data. Why are we collecting that if we're not doing anything with it? Don't skew the numbers. I always kind of like, I'm not criticizing Ben as the work, as the employee. I'm saying, is there a broken process? Do you not have enough resources? Let's kind of get to the root of it and take the personal aspect out, or maybe it's, a lot of times in local government, and it's not specific to any organization, we promote people for their technical expertise, but not necessarily for their leadership or their management qualities. And you have to own that. You have to be real. I mean, leadership development, even just managing and supervising, those are learned. A lot of people don't have those. We all get it from somewhere. Sometimes it's from people who don't emulate the best examples, but just being real, if I hired an engineer, it's because they can sign my plans as a professional engineer. It's not necessarily, and then I promote them to a supervisor or a manager or assistant director or director. That's not why they came to the city or county. So just being open to like the continuous learning mindset and developing our people. So with the purchasing director that I mentioned earlier, she was so contract savvy. She was an attorney, or she is an attorney. She is contract savvy, but it was just managing the people. So it's like, great, that is my superpower. Like we do this together and help develop you and make you successful. And it was, just being realistic about everybody has areas where they need to grow and develop, and just having, again, those open conversations and putting your money where your mouth is, because, I always say I loved HR is such a love of mine, because, I was over any loss of property. So if you were suspended or terminated, it would have to come through me to sign off on it. And so often it would be, nope, send it back. Go do something else, because it's people manage, or some people work to what the level that they're managed at. And you're like, well, where was, did we tell them that these were the expectations? So I just love clearly the leadership and the development training for our people.
Yeah. I love that as an example in the lesson. Is like you're still using that curiosity as like a superpower, but it's being blameless. It's going in, trying to find the root cause of issues, and then rolling up your sleeves and trying to like solve it together to like take. It's like doing a ride along in a great fire department, but you're fixing a problem together in a different scenario. So and when the employees come across my desk for one reason or another, it's being able to know who we're talking about is. And maybe but I feel like I always have a one up on people in the room, because like, oh, that person, they're like, how do you know that person? Like, oh, I saw him in the elevator. And you're like, what? Because I'm constantly talking to people and hearing them. And, one former employee came up for discipline, and I was like, well, what's going on? This person is, an 11-year city employee with outstanding annual reviews. And they were like, oh, they're, this person's not doing this, this, and this. We're like, well, that person's also, going through a divorce, and, maybe having some compassion, and, not to say they have to do their job, but, treating them as a human
and not, just a number. Say, okay, well, have you tried this? Kind of, because, and I just think, and last week in our Florida Women Leading Government webinar, one of our speakers said she keeps a sticky note on her computer, which I love this one. And it says, would I want to work for me? And I'm like, that's essentially it. Like if I were going through something hard in life, I would hope my employer could show me grace through it, because my track record spoke for itself, So just kind of having that mindset too, I think.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Well, awesome. Well, like I said, we will link to this article too in our show notes, so folks can check it out and read more. And I really appreciate you adding a little color to kind of your ideas here. So as we're approaching the end of our time together, but actually we're over time. But what's next? What are you working on that our listeners ought to look out for? I know you're at a bit of a transition. So what are you thinking for the next few months?
Yeah, I'm figuring out the consulting gig, and I'm going to do another ELGL article soon. So you can be on the lookout for that. And then Florida Women Leading Government, I'm the programming chair. So we are doing every other month free webinars in addition to the member subscribe programming. So there's a lot of content that I'm pumping out. It's not just for women. So anyone, it should really be Florida, but if you don't live in Florida, we don't check where you're coming from. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn and sign up for a webinar.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Then the hardest question always, if you could be the GovLove DJ and pick the exit music for this episode, what song would you pick?
I would have to go with something Taylor Swift. So in Lakeland, okay, again, most of my coworkers are 20 plus years. And, I started with seeing her in concert in Wisconsin. I think it was 2008. Well, of course, I went to the Eras tour when she was in Tampa, and then again in Miami a year and a half later. So my coworkers in Lakeland threw me a Taylor Swift going away party.
I love that.
My city attorney, anytime he hears Taylor Swift, he thinks of me. So I'm like, I love that I've infiltrated everybody's brain to be like Taylor Swift. And he actually told me his daughter is, I think she's in college or graduated college. And one day she said, Dad, I like Taylor Swift too. And I was like, I trumped your daughter for like Taylor Swift and you think of me. So, I'm in my Taylor Swift era. So I would have to, I couldn't pick one. So I'd have to figure out which one to do, but a Taylor Swift song for sure.
Okay. So we'll leave it up to our producer, which Taylor song.
What he feels inspired.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, that ends our episode for today. Emily, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. I really appreciate you taking a little time and chatting. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And for our listeners, GovLove is brought to you by engaging local government leaders, and the best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. You can also reach us online at elgl.org/GovLove or at our LinkedIn page. You can give us a follow and see updates from the podcast. Subscribe to GovLove on your favorite podcast app. And if you're already subscribed, help us spread the word. Go tell a friend, a colleague, a neighbor about this podcast. Help us spread the word that GovLove is the go-to place for local government stories. And with that, thank you for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.
It's been a while since I have even heard from you. I should just tell you to leave, 'cause I know exactly where it leads, but I watch us go round and round each time. You got that jeans